For Sunday, August 23rd, you found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda today, Jimmy Carter's courage on display this week. In Atlanta, crime is allegedly down, but is it really? And in presidential politics, one guy's trumping the field. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us. We saw an absolutely first-rate show of courage this week from former President Jimmy Carter. We told you last week, of course, that he had been diagnosed with cancer and had liver cancer surgery. And this week, he faced the world and talked about the fact that the disease has spread to his brain 4 spots. I watched that press conference, and I got to say, if that's me, I can't do what Jimmy Carter did.
Well,
I mean, it was amazing.
I think we would all agree. That's right.
Such equanimity, such calm, such objectivity. It was really almost as if he were talking about somebody other than himself.
Well, it's the old nuclear engineer in him, right there.
Well, you know, he did it with so much ease. And what he really did is really, I think, gave people hope that he's going to battle through this. But the phrase, you know, it's in God's hand now, just showed that, listen, this is a man who's lived a great life, and he's going to continue to live a great life. But that's the Jimmy Carter that we've always known. And that's the person that Georgia loves so much, and he's just such a statesman. And so I think it was probably the best press conference that I've seen at a very long time, where someone just came out front and just showed so much courage. So we should definitely commend him for that.
It's the best I've seen from Jimmy Carter since he was running for president back in the 70s. This was the real Jimmy Carter, I think. And there was an interesting question.
Well, I want to give a footnote to that, because I've been very critical of Jimmy Carter's politics over the years. But I always think, and I've always told you this, Dick, over the years, I think that he showed extreme courage and extreme willingness to get 2 longtime warring enemies together, and that's when he got Egypt and Israel together, and that peace pact is his legacy. I was very critical of a lot of other aspects of his presidency, but he showed that courage back then, Theron, that, as you point out, rightly so, that he showed now, and that was a signal foreign policy achievement.
Yes, it was.
Well, and one of the questions he was asked the other day was, did he have any regrets?
Yes.
And he did say, I thought kind of nicely that yes, he wished he had brought one more helicopter to rescue the hostages.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not going to argue with him over Iran policy now, but I don't think one helicopter would have done it.
No.
No, and I think he knew that too. I mean, he was just saying that that was one of his regrets, is not being able to get those hostages released before he left office.
Yeah. It was altogether fascinating.
Yeah, it was. And then, but he went on to say, had he not had that happen, he might not have had the success that he's had with the Carter Center and the amount of changes and help and assistance that he's done all over the world to promote democracy and to improve health.
Well, and he's going to be missed at the Carter Center. I mean, he was one of the few presidents, living presidents, ex-presidents, that you could go to the center and he'll actually be there. And so I think he said in his statement that the one thing that he's going to have to do is sort of reduce his hours. But I mean, he's still very active in the Carter Center every single day. Well,
and just to wrap it up, he was supposed to be teaching Sunday school this morning at the Maranatha Baptist Church in Plains. I think the guy's amazing.
He is amazing.
The last thing I'd want to be doing is teaching Sunday school if I'm facing the radiation treatments that he's facing.
He attended last week's Sunday school, and so they were very happy to see him.
Yeah, but I think he shows that he is truly a man of faith, and he has lived that way and walked that way, and so he already knows that everything's going to be all right.
And if that's what a man of faith is, he's given the nation and the world a demonstration of faith. Again, I don't think I'm up to that. I couldn't do what he did. Let's change the subject to another person of that era. Who died last weekend before we were able to tape and discuss him, and that's Julian Bond. And he's not going to have anything elaborate. His ashes are going to be distributed in the Gulf of Mexico. Julian Bond is a fascinating public figure, always fascinated me. Funny, smart as heck, brilliant guy, but I always felt like Julian Bond was a man who had not reached his full potential. I don't mean to speak ill of the dead, but I just never felt he, I guess if anything, it was his early pioneering as a young man, and then his long tenure as head of the NAACP is where he left his mark.
I think where you're going with this is we all remember in 1986 that very divisive Democrat primary for Congress, and that's when John Lewis, in my opinion, came into his own. He of course was an icon. You know, he was one of the big six of the civil rights heroes. And Julian, he went after Julian big time. He tied him with Atlanta's drug culture, as you remember. He inferred that
the AJC.
But I mean, I think that's when Julian, you know, he didn't rise to the fore like he should.
Phil, let me. I got to cut you off. I knew Julian Bond personally. I know Congressman Lewis personally. I've had many conversations with the two of them. One thing that you're leaving out, and again, I got to make sure you stay to the facts here. Julian Bond and Congressman
What would I
Lewis,
do without you?
Yeah, Congressman Lewis and Julian Bond were still very close friends to the day that he decided to go on to heaven. Even after the
everything I've said about 1986 is true. It's been documented. I know they were friends afterwards.
Again, but I think so when Dick raises the question, how would he be remembered? I'll tell you how he'll be remembered. Number one, what he did for NAACP it's unparalleled. I mean, to really take that organization and go through some very tough times with social justice issues and racial equality issues that we were dealing with. Also, he was probably one of the most courageous members of the legislature. I mean, he stayed seated. He opposed very, very key pieces of legislation and really made it possible for many of folks on the Democratic side.
Well, there's no question of what you're saying.
I understand that. But you cut me off. I'm going to just finish up. I'm just going to finish up with my thought, and that is that Julian Bond, yes, did some good things. I won't take that away from him. But you know, he took a bridge too far when he was with the NAACP, referring to the Republican Party as a Nazi party.
No,
that was a way. And insulting Condoleezza Rice, the first black Secretary of State. You know, there were some things that you're leaving out here.
But that's
Julian
because
was
he had
sharp-tongued.
the courage. Yes, he was. He was very sharp-tongued, and he had the courage to stand up and speak out when many other people would not.
Insulting Condoleezza Rice is speaking out?
Yes, it is, because he called the Tea Party the Taliban wing of the Republican Party.
Let me back up, because this thought occurred to me this week, and it's probably not original, but you know, you think about Julian Bond, who the General Assembly didn't want to seat because he opposed the war in Vietnam. Yeah. And I knew those characters down there at the General Assembly then. They had to wonder, who is this punk kid? And you look at the pictures, now Julian's just a little bit older than I am.
Right?
But he looked like a baby.
He paved the way, Dick, and I'm so glad, unlike Phil, that you make that point, because
I made the point too. I just said I'm not going to take away. I'm trying to balance the man's career. I'm trying to balance the man's career.
This week we got facts.
He was no saint.
Look, I don't agree with anything Julian Bond said as head of the NAACP. I'm with you on that.
Okay, I'll agree. I agree with everything you said.
Here's the point I want to make. Just think about Jimmy Carter, who became governor, and let's face it, Jimmy Carter ran as part of the old South, part of the segregationist South.
Right.
I'm not saying Jimmy Carter was, but that's how he ran for governor. And here's Julian Bond, this strange figure cast into their midst. So that General Assembly was a product of men just like Jimmy Carter. That's who they were. Right. And here's this kid sitting there saying, nope, no way, I'm not doing that.
Right, but I'm not so sure many of the members of the General Assembly were just like Jimmy Carter, because Jimmy Carter was is a very unique individual as a son of the South.
So that it was the New South, there it was. Right. The New South was in Jimmy Carter's conversion and his campaign of 1976, and it was before that with Julian Bond and the way he took his seat in the General Assembly. The New South came out of all that.
That's right. They both were game changers.
Yes.
But if I can for a few seconds, I just want to talk to the man. I mean, he was one of the few civil rights icons that would actually take a call from a young person who's asking about politics and asking about civil rights. And up until the day that he died, I mean, he was out here being a very, very...
He was a professor, he was a teacher.
And he had just got through talking about Black Lives Matter, which we know is a very, very growing movement in our country right now. So again, Phil, I'm not trying to say that, you know, he's a saint and we all do things that people may disagree with, but I think that he should be characterized as a very courageous young man, and what he did when he was starting his career, and we're going to miss him.
Could I have one more point?
Last
Personal
thought.
privilege.
You got to get out.
He mentored me without me even knowing it. When he was president of Atlanta NAACP, before he left Atlanta, he had John Dell Johnson, who was executive director, ask me to start a program for high school students called the NAACP Leadership Academy, and we based it on Leadership Atlanta, and we had a school term program, and we did it for about 3 or 4 years, and I didn't find out until later that it was his brainchild.
All right, well, and in the end, it was Julian Bond's opposition to the Vietnam War.
And the draft.
And the draft. Jimmy Carter became president. Jimmy Carter pardoned the draft dodgers, making Julian Bond feel real good at the time, making the rest of the nation sick to their stomach. Anyway,
Oh, please, they can't help themselves.
when we come back, we'll talk about this conflicting crime picture in the city of Atlanta. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
Police in the city of Atlanta said this week that major crime is down about a third, I think, for the year. Yeah. A third. Yet we're confronted at the top of our newscasts and the front page of our newspaper with several awful crimes. A young family victims of a home invasion. The dad just shot for no apparent reason. And then we have these large teams of young people. I think I would be safe in calling them a gang, robbing a boutique in the High Buckhead there. Phil, you've been critical of the Atlanta police a lot. How do you square the facts as the police release them with the stories we see?
Well, you know, there's lies and statistics, and what they're doing is they're playing with the numbers, because even the police department, hear me out before you start laughing, because the police department there, and you can laugh about this, the murder rate has doubled since last year, which is very serious, and even Mayor Kasim Reed has to address that and says he is. Burglaries, Dick, home burglaries are up 40%. Those are also statistics. Now, I held up a newspaper just a couple of weeks ago on how gang activity is increasing in Atlanta. So, you know, I think that rather than just laughing this off, it's a very serious problem, because we're all in favor of developing Atlanta and economic development. And if we can't get crime under control, all of this is for naught.
Well, and one of the problems with public perception, Theron, is that when crime is personalized, and I say that because we have the image of the young man getting shot in the legs out in front of his house, and the mom grabbing a small child and trying to run away, and they fired at her. They didn't hit her. You're saying, I don't care what the statistics say. We got a problem.
Absolutely. Listen, I'm very sensitive, like every citizen who lives in the city, about crime. I mean, shootings, one shooting, 2 shootings is one too much. The reason I sort of chuckle, Phil, is because you can't have it both ways. You come on the show 2-3 weeks ago, and you basically make your argument off this crime statistics, and then this week, when they're showing that it's 3% down, you want to say that it's lies, and they're basically playing with the numbers. I think what it showed is what I also said on the show about 4 or 5 weeks ago, which is crime in any city, not just Atlanta, is very seasonal. It fluctuates, and what you're seeing is, and for the month of July, where kids are starting to go back to school, and you can.
Well, but shouldn't these smash and grab young people have been in school? That's the
I get that, but my point is
so
that
we should feel good if it's seasonal crime.
No,
I'm
just saying, if you're going to use the numbers to basically cement your argument and then acknowledge that the crime rate has gone down, which Dick started off this.
Well, I'm saying that it's not going down. They're being selective. There may be various. They took about 8 or 9 different categories. I'm telling you, murder has doubled. I do know that. But
for the month of July, a year to date, it's actually down 1%. So look, I think people are going to continue to work together to make sure that crime decreases. I think you'll see it decrease this month because kids are back in school, and you got to work with the school system to make sure that these
maybe Atlanta shouldn't be a sanctuary city for criminal illegal immigrants either. That's another problem.
Let me change the subject. Mayor Kasim Reed is doing something very smart, I think, working with the U.S. Attorney and his own police and others. The demolition of those homes on English Avenue near the new Falcon Stadium. It's a pretty powerful visual image that we're gonna what we used to call them stash houses and that sort of thing, and they're tearing them down. Right. I don't know what comes in terms of economic development, but I think Mayor Kasim Reed, he is the mayor of Atlanta, Mayor Kasim Reed, is is doing a good thing there.
Well, and I also just was it Thursday, the fire of one of the old dorms at Morris Brown College campus burned, and the fire officials were suggesting that perhaps there were squatters in there because it wasn't in use right now. So that is something that really does need some attention, and I think that the city is committed to doing that.
Tell me what Mayor Kasim Reed of the city of Atlanta is up to with John Eves, and what John Eves is up to. What he wants a voice in how Turner Field is disposed of. And of course, Mayor Kasim Reed has been the guy that's out front on all that all this time. I assume Georgia State is the leading prospective client, but is there a real problem here, or is Eves of Fulton County just saying, I just want to have my voice heard?
I don't think there's a problem there. Listen, all of the items that Chairman Eves listed, the main one being transparency and making sure that we have public input in this transaction that is about to occur at the TED, were all fair items for him to request. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of those requests are things that the authority were planning to do anyway in that process. And so I think he should definitely be commended for raising questions. I don't think the resolution actually got a vote, but and I think the mayor will and the authority will be open to sitting at the table with Fulton County, of course, to make sure that this $5 million, I think roughly about $5 million operational cost that currently the TED is operating under, how they incur that. But ultimately, look, I think Commissioner Eves is to be commended. Mayor Reed, I'm sure, is open to talking to him about that, and Councilwoman Keisha Lance Bottoms.
I don't disagree with that. I do think it's a welcome turn from the mayor who just a few weeks ago was feuding with John Eves. So I'm glad to hear this.
Yeah, well, I got to look at some politics on this too. You know, the mayor cannot run again. And what John Eves may be doing is keeping his name out there and expanding his own profile so that perhaps he could look at that.
That's a good point, Alexis. I hadn't even looked that far ahead. Good for you.
I think that is a very good point.
All right, we got to get out. We'll regroup. There's a couple of other items from Fulton County and a kind of a shocker from DeKalb County. And there's presidential politics. It's all ahead on the Georgia Gang.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
We're going to try to zip through some local news so we can talk about presidential politics. And we were in Fulton County just a moment ago. Phil, Commissioner Liz Hausman dropped her suit against Arthur Ferdinand, the tax collector, because she saw the legal bills, more than $100,000, the county defending Arthur Ferdinand with taxpayer money. So I think Commissioner Hausman probably did the right thing politically, huh?
I think politically and morally, and the whole genesis of that issue was the fact that the tax commissioner targeted her and tried to make an example out of her for accusing her of not living in her district, which was false. That came out, and so I think she did the right thing. I mean, the meter was running.
Real quickly, a shocker late in the week. The retired judge, C.J. Becker, Cynthia Becker of DeKalb County Superior Court, was indicted by a grand jury in Cobb County on 6 felony counts of lying and making false statements. I'm just blown away by it because I considered her one of DeKalb's finest judges, still do, even though she's retired. And but the way that last trial she handled ended was very strange.
Well, this is very controversial in the Daily Report. The legal organ had a very good piece on this recently, and I'll just kind of sum it up very quickly. And that is, it's the role of what they call the JQC, the Judicial Qualifications Commission. She came in there unprepared. She thought it was going to be a friendly sit down, and they started asking her very hostile questions, and she made some statements she probably wishes she didn't have.
Because they weren't true, you mean?
Well, yes. Yeah, they were misstatements. I think she admits that. However, what is the role? The question in that article framed it properly. What is the role of the JQC? Is it to help a judge? Is it to maybe straighten things out? Is it to say, maybe you didn't mean to say that? And no, they just based that meeting, that private meeting where she was unprepared for these indictments, and I think that's questionable.
Well, back in DeKalb for a moment, let me just say this. John Boyer, the husband of former Commissioner Elaine Boyer, was sentenced in federal court in that unending corruption in DeKalb County. He got 1 year and a day. The U.S. attorney, the assistant U.S. attorney in that case, called DeKalb County a center of corruption. echoing kind of what Mike Bowers called it, which was a cesspool or something. I forget what the direct quote from, we had that a week ago. And so I guess the investigations continue. And finally, I just want to mention this. In Cobb County, it was interesting to see that Moody's gave the county its highest bond rating over the Braves bonds for the new stadium out there, saying the county has got a terrific employment base, terrific economic base, and they got the highest rating. And I think that kind of is a rebuke to some of the critics of the stadium deal, in a way, though taxpayer money is still involved, I'm not sure. So let's talk about what's going on nationally. First of all, Johnny Isaacson came out against the Iran deal. I would say this would be a rare occasion, Theron, wouldn't you think, where Johnny Isaacson and Charles Schumer and Robert Menendez are all on the same team?
Well, it's interesting, and you know, Senator Isaacson has definitely been very vocal on this issue. He's got a lot of experience in foreign relations, and so I think stay tuned. The president has definitely been making a lot of calls to members of the House and the Senate on this deal while he's been on vacation, and so we got to wait and let it play out. But
even with the side deal that Iran struck with the UN, that Iran will have its own inspectors.
Self-inspection, that's amazing.
Do you like that? I mean, do you feel good about that?
We're running out of time here, but
he didn't want to answer that one.
We're running out of time here. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to let Theron finish that because I want to go somewhere else. I'm not a huge Donald Trump fan, but he got my attention this week when he came out against birthright citizenship, also known as anchor babies. I've been saying that for 25 years. Phil, I believe you have too.
I have too. And you know who else was there before Donald Trump on the anchor baby?
Nathan Deal.
Nathan Deal. That's the right answer. For 17 unbroken years, when he served in Congress from Gainesville, every year he sponsored the bill to take away, it's one of the stupidest laws in this country.
It's not a law.
When a woman comes in and it sneaks in and has a baby, it's automatic citizenship. And so he tried to eliminate that.
Nowhere else in the world.
Well, the 14th Amendment, the origin was to make citizens of the recently freed, enslaved people.
That's right.
You're correct.
And they even exempted the Native Americans, and it wasn't until 1924 that they were made citizens.
Yeah, but
I think to turn over the birthright would be so un-American.
Hillary Clinton said it best.
We're the only country that does
Hillary
it.
Clinton said it best. Refer to them as babies, children, but more importantly, American citizens.
Oh,
and let's just sum it up there.
The big Planned Parenthood supporter all of a sudden is worried about babies. What a joke.
All right, I'm sorry we
said
didn't
it
have
best.
more time with that. This birthright citizenship is probably my public issue #1 these days, and I was just so pleased to see Trump take that up. We're out of time. When we come back, we'll anoint some winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And we've got winners and losers here. We're already trying to argue among ourselves about them. I think, do I throw you off guard if I go to you there?
No, absolutely. First, Julian Bond is definitely going to be my winner. I know we talked about him, just going to be missed, and my condolences go out to the Bond family. Pearlie Dove, who I know Alexis is going to talk about, we lost her. She was a wonderful lady, former chair of the Clark Atlanta University Department of Education, member of Delta Sigma Theta. So she's definitely going to be missed. And also Jimmy Carter. I want to definitely make him a winner for his courageous act this week.
Can't disagree one bit.
That's right.
Alexis?
And I will amen Pearlie Dove, who impacted thousands of people because of her tenure at Clark Atlanta as an educator of educators. And she will surely be missed, a real pillar of the Atlanta community. And also want to recognize Doris Massell, the wife of former Atlanta Mayor Sam Massell. She passed this week, and she was a wonderful partner for him, both in business and in politics. She'll be missed. And then I guess I want to make Donald Trump my loser because he is just a loose lips and he's going to sink some ships for the whole GOP. So look out, everybody.
Yeah, look at those ratings on the debate. Phil, what do you have?
Well, I think we all agree on Jimmy Carter as being the winner of the week. And again, yes, thank you.
You never thought you'd hear yourself say that, did you?
No, but I tell you what, I will make Donald Trump the winner because whether you agree with him or not, he has gotten the issue of illegal immigration into the national forefront. There has been just a bipartisan failure over the last 25 years to control this nation's borders, and I'm glad that he's influencing some of the other candidates, even Jeb
I think
Bush.
he's awakened millions of Americans.
Are you going to wear the
issues.
hat, Phil?
You know, I want to wear the hat that says "Make America Great Again." Are you for that?
No, I want to see
You're
you wear
not
the
for
hat
that.
next week.
You're
I want
not
to
for that.
see you wear the
Okay.
hat next week.
It's already great.
Why are liberals so weak on border control?
It's going to be a beautiful
You know why?
wall.
Because they're anchor Democrats. They're not anchor babies.
Oh, right.
My winner, Kennesaw State University. The Owls have sold out their upcoming first ever football game. Sellout. That's cool.
that.
Georgia State should be so lucky, but they have a bigger arena. And also, I want to single out the Atlanta Ballet, the oldest ballet company in the United States. And the ballet reported $3.1 million of revenue, all to the plus side, which was excellent, and an astounding 72,000 tickets sold to their performances. That's pretty amazing in this digital age that an ancient art form like ballet can do that in a place like Atlanta. And we'll see you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.